Alright, so let's just focus on the thinking process involved in trying to attack a problem like Gambler's Ruin yourself from scratch. So I'm going to read the problem first. It says, suppose that a gambler makes a series of $1 bets which she has a 50% chance of winning. If she wins, she gains $1. If she loses $1. She starts with $50 and continues to play until she either goes broke or has $250. And then this picture, I think, is sort of an illustration of what might happen. So here she is at the start, and she loses and wins a bunch of things, and maybe randomly she'll end up winning, or maybe more often, perhaps, she will end up losing everything. Okay, so already you know that the program is going to be structured like these other programs. So there's going to be some simulation you're going to be running over and over again. And inside the loop, you're going to have the end of each simulation is going to tell you some information which you're going to use to calculate something, like maybe the average number for something or maybe the probability of something. So I want to be sort of on the lookout here. Already, this scenario looks like it's described some gambling situation where it seems like maybe this is the thing that we're going to repeat over and over again. It's like a gambler is gambling until she either gets up to 250 or loses. Okay, so let's keep reading. Your program should answer two questions. What are the chances that she will go home with $250? So there I'm calculating a probability, it sounds like. And how many bets on average should she expect to make before getting $250 or losing everything? All right, well, I'm going to do one thing at a time. So I'm going to ignore part B. Let's just think about part A. So chances that she'll go home with $250. So I want to start planning my program. I'm not going to start coding. I'm just going to start planning. So I know I'm going to have a method, and I'm not sure what it's going to return yet, so I'll say void for the moment, and I'll come back later. But I know this method is going to run one trial. And what do I mean by a trial? What I mean is run one simulated gambling session. And if I wanted to, I could write more information there about what that actually means. Okay. And now I know I'm going to want to do that in a loop in order to calculate this probability I care about. So I'm going to make another method for that, which I will call calculate probability. And again, I haven't thought yet about what it should return or what it should take as inputs, but I'll get there in a second. I just want to flesh out what are the outlines of this thing going to look like. So I know this is going to run one gambling session. It's going to do what that first paragraph is saying. We're going to start the gambler with $50 and we're going to let her randomly bet and win and lose until it's over. And to calculate the probability, okay, so I'm going to add a comment here. This calculates probability. Player wins $250 when her session is over. Okay, so how am I going to do this? I think, I just want to sort of plan it out. So to calculate the probability, I know the probability is going to be approximated by the number of times the thing I care about happened. So the number of times she ended up winning divided by total trials that happened. So that's how I'm going to calculate it eventually. Okay, and I know what I'm going to do in order to get this number of times she ended up winning is I'm going to run a bunch of trials. So I know I'll need a loop for that. So I'm going to call it trial, and it's going to go from 0 to whatever my max trials are going to be. And I'm going to run one trial over and over again. And then I'm going to sort of collect information somehow. All right, so far so good. At this stage, I've got a couple of choices I could make. I could try and write the inside of run one trial, or I could think in more detail about what does this need to tell me? Once the trial is over, what information do I need to calculate the probability and make sure it returns that? I think I'm going to choose that one. So this is going to run a trial. When it's over, I know I need enough information to do this probability. So it seems like the key thing I need to know is, at the end of this run, did she end up winning or did she end up losing? So I think that's what I'm going to return. I'm going to return a Boolean, and it's going to return true if gambler ended up winning $250 at the end of the session. All right. I don't like to have compile time errors like this happen, so I'm just going to return true right now, but I'm not going to... I'll change this later when I actually fill in that method. Okay, so let's just assume that I've written that and that it works. So I can store the result into a variable. I'll call it result. And I guess what I want to do is, as I'm looping over all of these simulations, I want to check each one to see, like, did she actually win? And I want to count those, because that's what I need in order to get this. So I'll make a counter variable. Which I'll call number of times 1. And now I can say, if result is true, so if she won, then num times 1 plus plus. So I'll add to the number of times she won. Okay, so that's going to do it. With that information, now I can calculate the probability. The probability. So I'll make a double called probability. Number of times she ended up winning is my num times 1. Total trials is my max trials. And whenever I have a division, I get panic. Am I doing integer division? And it looks like the answer is maybe. Well, I didn't declare max trials, so we don't know. But just to be safe, I will do this. Max trials. So I guess I could declare max trials inside here. Or I think it would be nice to let whoever runs calculate probability tell me how many trials do they want to use in order to do the calculation. So I'm going to add max trials up here as a parameter. Okay, so I know that this method should work now, assuming that run one trial works. Notice I'm not actually returning anything yet or printing anything. Heck, why don't we return the thing? That'll be fine. So I'm going to return a double. That's the probability. So I'll just go ahead and return that directly. All right, so now all I need in order to make this work is to finish run one trial. So let me imagine, does run one trial need any input information in order to do its job correctly? Like, do I need to tell it something? And it seems like maybe no, because like all the details about how this is going to happen, those are all constants that were described in the problem itself. So here, I'm going to reread the description and then just try and do it. So a gambler makes a series of bets. If she wins, blah, 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 blah. She starts with $50 and continues to play until something happens. Okay, so I know I'll need a variable for the amount of money she has, and she starts at $50. And it says she's going to continue to play until one of two things happens. Until she goes broke or she has $250. So a couple ways you could do this. You could have a do while loop. So do random play. So I'm going to keep playing while something is true. So while the amount of money she has is bigger than 0, and also the amount of money she has is less than 250. So in other words, as long as her money is between these two endpoints, I want to keep playing. A different way to approach this is I could do this. I could just say while true. I'm just going to loop forever. And then on the inside, I could have some tests. I'll say if her amount of money is greater than or equal to 250, then I'll return, I forgot what I was supposed to, oh yeah, return true, because the goal of this method is, did she end up winning? And then if money is less than or equal to 0, I'll return false. And then it's saying this is an unreachable statement because this is going to loop forever, so it knows I'm never going to get down here, so I'll delete that. I think I'm going to go with this kind of approach. So she's starting with $50. We're looping until one of those two things happens. So now I've just got to do the random, did she win, did she lose? So I don't actually have to simulate the part where, like, we don't even know what she's betting on, right? Is she guessing a number? We don't know. All we know is she has a 50% chance of winning. That's the only thing that matters. So I'm going to make a double called did she win, and I'm going to say math.random times 1. So that's between 0 and 1. And so now I'll say if did she win is bigger than 0.5, then I'll say money plus plus, else money minus minus. So 50% chance will increase the money by 1, 50% chance will decrease the money by 1. And that'll keep happening until one of those two conditions happens, and at that point we'll return the right thing. Okay, cool. So going back up here, run one trial is now going to return the results, and if she won, we'll count the number of times she won, and then we'll return the result. Okay, so I think this feels like it's going to be a working solution to the problem. So if you want to write part B, you're welcome to write a completely separate set of methods that does part B. Part B says how many bets on average should she expect to make before one of those two things happens. So in other words, like how many bets does she make on average before her session is over? So you could write an entire second set of methods for this, or if we want to, we're already running these trials. So instead of just returning one piece of information, let's return two pieces of information at once. So the information I need to return, so now I'm going to return, so it's awkward because I need to return true or false for did she win or did she bust, but then I also need to return how many bets did she make before that happened. And it's awkward because there are different data types. So I think what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to employ my own code here. I'm going to return a 2-element int array. Array element 0 is 0 if she busted, or 1 if she won $250. So the first thing I'm gonna, so the first element of my array, I'm just gonna have a 0 or 1, and that's gonna represent what my Boolean used to represent. And now array element 1 is the number of times she bet before that happened. So now instead of returning Boolean, I'm going to return an int array. I guess I'm going to need a counter for number of bets that starts at 0. And then each time she bets, I'm going to add 1. And now I can't just return true. I'm going to return a new int array that's going to contain, so let's see, if this if statement worked, then I know she won, and I said that I was going to use 1 to represent that situation. And then the second element of the array was going to be the number of bets. And then here I would return a new int array, 0 number of bets. Okay. What happens if you didn't think about this trick? Like maybe you're not so sure how to create an int array like this. Doesn't matter. Like this is just one way to do it. This is not the only way to do it. So like I said, you could have had an entirely separate method to calculate this other set of things. And now that you've seen this approach, you can remember that for the next time that you do this. Back up here, now I've got to collect the information in the right way. So I'm going to make an int array called results to hold the answer. And now I can do two things. I can say, did she win is results 0, and I can say number of bets equals results 1. So now in order to count the right thing, I'll say if did she win equals 1, then I'll increment that. And now I want to calculate not just the probability, but I want to calculate this kind of like average number of bets. So the way I calculate an average is I'll need sum of bet lengths. So I'm going to add together all the different numbers of bets and then divide by how many, because that's how you calculate an average. So I'm going to set that to 0. I'm going to say sum of bet lengths plus equals num bets, and then at the end, I guess I'm not going to return both answers here, so I'm going to make this be the probability, and then if I wanted to calculate the average length is going to be, what's it going to be? It's going to be sum of bet lengths divided by however many trials we did, like however many things we added together. So max trials is the number of things we added together. Okay, so let's step back. It's complaining because I'm not returning a double anymore. So stepping back, I think there's a couple of things to keep in mind when you're attacking this kind of program. One is you notice I didn't like start at the beginning and write one line of code after another until I got to the end. I kind of jumped around a little bit because I was using this way of decomposing to help me think about the problem. So I knew I needed to run one trial, so I made that method. And I knew I was going to run that one trial in a loop a whole bunch of times, so I wrote that method. And then all I had to figure out was I needed to think, what is the calculation I really needed to do? Because once I figured out what information do I need for my calculation, everything else followed from there. I knew I needed to know the number of times she won, so what that tells me is that when I run the trial, it has to tell me, did she win or not? So that way I can count how many times did she win. So that's the kind of idea. When you're running the simulation in a trial, think clearly about what do you want to calculate, what information do you need, and then make sure that your method that runs the trial will give you back the information you need in order to do the calculation. Okay, good luck.